They called it Pervitin. To the outside world, it was little more than a stimulant, a harsh cousin of amphetamine. But inside Nazi Germany, it powered some of the most aggressive military campaigns in human history. Imagine this: a young soldier stumbling through the snows of the Ardennes, eyes wild, heart pounding, a man who had not slept in 3 days, not because of fear, but because of drugs. The German Blitzkrieg, so swift, so ferociously efficient, was not only born of steel and strategy, it was fueled by a tiny, chalky tablet that turned ordinary men into relentless war machines. And yet, for all its short-term brilliance, it would carve a path of destruction far deeper than the battlefield. In the late 1930s, as Nazi Germany prepared to unleash its war machine on Europe, a chilling calculation was taking shape within the Wehrmacht's upper ranks. How do you make a soldier who never sleeps, never hesitates, never feels fear? The answer, they believed, lay not just in training or doctrine but in chemistry. The pressures of planning a lightning war, Blitzkrieg, required speed, endurance, and unwavering obedience. Hitler's generals feared logjams in their offensive timelines, and conventional human limitations had no place in their mechanized dreams of conquest. The ideology of domination demanded a biology of superhuman performance. Thus, in Berlin offices and military barracks, a pharmaceutical solution was embraced with disturbing enthusiasm. Soldiers, from tank crews to infantry, were issued Pervitin tablets as casually as rations. The year was 1939, and on the eve of war, science had found a way to turn the soldier into a machine. The man behind Pervitin's militarization was Dr. Otto Ranke, a physiologist at the Berlin-based Military Medical Academy. Ranke saw in methamphetamine not just a stimulant, but the potential for a revolutionary asset to the German war effort. In the months leading up to the invasion of Poland, he coordinated mass trials among students and soldiers, meticulously recording their ability to stay awake, march further, and suppress appetite under the drug's influence. The results were striking. Subjects performed with robotic consistency, often reporting enhanced confidence and the absence of fatigue. Convinced of its promise, Ranke convinced Wehrmacht leadership to integrate the drug into field supplies. By 1940, pharmaceutical companies like Temmler were ramping up industrial production, packaging Pervitin in tidy boxes labeled for troop use. It became as common in a soldier's kit as a rifle or a helmet. But the true innovation wasn't the drug itself, it was the system-wide adoption of a chemical solution to a fundamentally human problem: the limits of body and spirit in war. Germany wasn't just weaponizing steel, it was now weaponizing biology. As the Wehrmacht stormed through France in 1940, the so-called miracle of Blitzkrieg was not solely one of strategy or technology, it was chemically enhanced. Eyewitness accounts describe German troops pushing for days without rest, their eyes glassy, their movements eerily methodical. But the cracks began to show almost immediately. Reports emerged of soldiers collapsing mid-march, suffering from hallucinations, or lapsing into psychosis. Commanders initially dismissed these incidents as rare side effects or signs of weak constitution, unwilling to acknowledge that their chemical shortcut came with a growing cost. By the time the Eastern Front consumed massive divisions in the endless wastes of Russia, the darker truth could not be ignored. Dependency had set in. Soldiers begged for more tablets, unable to function without them, and some units ran out of supply, leading to plummeting morale and erratic behavior. What began as a tactical advantage had spiraled into a logistical and medical crisis. The drug that helped launch Lightning War now threatened to consume the very men it was meant to empower. The German dream of invincible soldiers had collided with the brutal reality of human fragility. Pervitin had won them speed, but it cost them their soul. The German military command, alarmed by the deteriorating condition of their troops, began to reevaluate the widespread use of Pervitin. By 1941, some medical officers raised formal concerns about the drug's long-term effects. Sudden withdrawal symptoms, ranging from tremors to deep psychological breaks, were jeopardizing entire units. Orders were discreetly issued to limit distribution, and research into less addictive alternatives quietly commenced. But the damage was already done. The myth of the tireless Nazi soldier had been chemically sculpted and then shattered by its own momentum. Even as the Allies closed in during the final years of the war, German veterans carried back more than wounds. They carried fragmented minds, addictions, and a legacy of a war machine that tried to hack the human condition. Biology had been bent to serve ideology, but nature, in the end, refused to be conquered. War isn't just fought with bullets. It's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. The rise and collapse of Pervitin's military use leaves behind a cautionary tale, etched in both medical files and battlefield memories. What began as a scientific curiosity, an academic experiment repurposed as a weapon, evolved into a large-scale human trial conducted without ethics or foresight. Its invocation in Nazi strategy shows how modern warfare is not only a contest of arms, but also of manipulation and control, reaching deep into the physiology of the individual soldier. In trying to engineer an edge, the Nazi regime exposed the terrifying implications of chemically enhanced warfare, one where agency is sacrificed for efficiency, and the human being is reduced to a temporary utility. It is a reminder that behind every innovation in war, no matter how brilliant or daring, lies the potential for unintended and unforgivable consequences. Germany's use of Pervitin did not merely blur the boundaries between biology and battle, it attempted to erase them entirely, proving that the most dangerous weapon in war may not be the one in your hand, but the one you consume. Long after the last shots of World War II were fired, the effects of the Nazi military's chemical experimentation continued to ripple across Europe. Post-war medical institutions in Germany and abroad faced an influx of veterans bearing previously unrecognized psychological and physical symptoms. Some carried diagnostic labels like manic depression or shell shock, but many suffered from what could only be described as collapse of the self, a disintegration that puzzled doctors until old Wehrmacht medical records surfaced, revealing widespread methamphetamine use. In the decades that followed, nations re-examined their own military pharmacology, questioning previously held doctrines about endurance and performance. The Cold War arms race included not only missiles and spies, but also drug labs and psychological experiments run in secrecy. Meanwhile, the story of Pervitin faded into obscure footnotes, its memory buried beneath the rubble of Nazi defeat. But for those who had felt its grip and survived, the war never truly ended. The tablets were gone, but the shakes, the paranoia, the nightmares, they lingered. And in those unseen battles of the mind, the true cost of that chemical gamble was finally counted. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. From a historian's lens, the Pervitin episode illuminates a recurring truth about warfare: ideas, unchecked by ethics, can spiral into horrors that outlive the battles themselves. Nazi Germany, in its dogged pursuit of advantage, turned biomedical science into a tool of coercion, not care. What is most haunting is not just that soldiers were drugged, but that entire campaigns were built around their altered states. The notion that victory might emerge from a chemically manufactured willpower reflected a hubris as dangerous as it was innovative. It blurred the line between soldier and subject, between courage and chemical compulsion, and while the world now recoils at such unethical experimentation, the seeds of similar thinking persist in new forms in debates about bio-enhancement, neurotechnology, and cognitive warfare. The legacy of Pervitin is not confined to history books, because its cautionary voice still echoes in modern laboratories and strategic think tanks. It reminds us that the most seductive ideas in war are often those that promise to transcend human limits, only to expose them deeper than we imagined. Modern militaries, despite publicly discouraging the excessive use of psychostimulants, have quietly continued to wrestle with the same seductive dilemma that gripped the Wehrmacht: how to optimize the soldier beyond normal capacity. From modafinil trials among Allied forces in the Gulf War to experimental cognitive enhancers explored by defense contractors today, the shadows of Pervitin stretch long and undiminished. Lessons from the Nazi project resurface in policy debates over ethical boundaries, troop consent, and the creeping influence of biotechnology in combat readiness. But a central tension remains unresolved, whispered in war rooms and biotech labs alike. How far should a nation go to erase the soldier's need for sleep, fear, or food in the name of strategic superiority? As history has shown, bending the body too far for the sake of war breaks more than just bones. It fractures identity, undermines judgment, and redefines what it means to be human in battle. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Today, the legacy of Pervitin is studied not only in military history circles, but in medical ethics classes, pharmacology programs, and global defense institutions. Its existence is a chilling case study in how scientific innovation, when unbound from morality, can be wielded for domination rather than healing. Museums and archives across Europe now preserve remnants of the tablets, packaging, and field reports' grim artifacts that once promised battlefield supremacy. Scholars debate whether Pervitin's deployment marked the birth of biochemical warfare, not in the traditional sense of poison gas or nerve agents, but in the systemic manipulation of one's own forces. There lies the disturbing evolution, from armoring the body to altering the mind. As warfare hurtles toward a future entangled with AI, genetic enhancement, and neurobiology, the ghost of Pervitin warns us that technological edge must never outpace ethical restraint. The Wehrmacht's drugged advance into Poland was more than a military blitz, it was the beginning of a dangerous new frontier. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. The story of Nazi Germany's drugged soldiers is not just a relic of the past, it is a mirror held up to our present and future. Every generation of warfare breeds innovations that promise to close the gap between ambition and limitation, and every such innovation carries a price. Whether it comes in the form of a tablet, a neural implant, or an algorithm, the pursuit of the perfect soldier continues to tempt us with its cold logic and dangerous allure. In classrooms and command centers alike, the lessons of Pervitin are dissected not for nostalgia, but for foresight. The world must remember that what begins as a quest for efficiency may end in tragedy. For the greatest threat in war may not be an enemy with more firepower, but a doctrine that forgets the human cost of its own cleverness. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. Even more unsettling is how Pervitin's use signaled a shift in how leadership viewed their soldiers not as individual human beings with limits and will, but as components in a larger war engine to be tuned and optimized. This dehumanization wasn't only ideological but operational. Logistics officers tracked methamphetamine inventories as closely as ammunition, and battle plans increasingly assumed that entire divisions could operate under chemically induced extremes. In many ways, the drug's integration into military doctrine foreshadowed future doctrines that would prioritize data, output, and functionality over mental wellness or moral consequence. Modern conversations around artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, and enhanced cognition in martial contexts mirror the same foundational question. Where do we draw the line between empowering the soldier and erasing them? The Nazi experiment with Pervitin proved one immutable truth. Once war crosses into the human body, the battlefield is no longer just geography. It is the mind, the soul, the very essence of being. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Across enemy lines, Allied intelligence had begun intercepting both the rumors and the consequences of the German drug program. British and American medical officers noted the disturbing resilience of captured Wehrmacht troops, many of whom exhibited signs of stimulative psychosis rather than mere battlefield trauma. An MI6 report from 1942 described the combat behavior of German units as unnaturally uniform in endurance and aggression, prompting covert studies into what substances might be fueling such mechanical precision. While the Allies refrained from institutionalizing stimulant use to the Nazi degree, classified programs were initiated to assess the viability of similar compounds. The specter of Pervitin, even without its mass adoption, began silently shaping the pharmacological tactics of modern armed forces. It was an arms race of chemistry waged in laboratories and field stations, raising not only strategic stakes, but ethical alarms. The confrontation with Nazi pharmacowarfare didn't just drive fear. It drove imitation, sometimes under different names and guises. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In the years after the war, as Cold War tensions sharpened and psychological warfare emerged as a new front, the residue of Nazi drug experimentation lingered like radiation across intelligence communities and military think tanks. CIA initiatives such as MKUltra, infamously borrowed from wartime models of psychoactive control, exploring ways to manipulate memory, obedience, and aggression using potent chemical cocktails. Though far removed from the muddy trenches of Europe, these post-war experiments carried the same kernel of Pervitin's insight: control the mind, and you control the soldier. Meanwhile, efforts to rehabilitate addicted veterans remained sporadic and underfunded, while pharmaceutical firms pivoted to civilian markets, marketing diluted forms of the same drugs under the guise of productivity and vitality. The battlefield had temporarily gone quiet, but the pharmacological war continued in boardrooms, clinics, and covert operations. Pervitin's story, born in the desperate labs of a collapsing regime, had mutated into the DNA of modern military ambition, and as the world moved onward into an age of drones and exosuits, it left one haunting question unanswered. If war itself evolves, why does our temptation to override humanity remain the same? War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Today, the resurgence of interest in human performance enhancement has reignited debates that trace their lineage directly back to Pervitin. Military research arms regularly fund studies into nootropics, stress inoculation, and even gene editing in pursuit of the elusive edge. Drones and automation may now dominate the headlines, but at the center of a battlefield still stands the soldier, a complex, vulnerable organism. And once again, experts ponder whether that organism must be broken and rebuilt in the name of victory. The tale of Nazi Germany's chemically altered troops is not just a historical anomaly, it is a blueprint of caution. Behind the promises of victory at any cost lies a recurring danger that in trying to perfect the warrior, we risk losing the very humanity that justifies the fight. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In closing, the saga of Nazi Germany's use of Pervitin stands as a stark invocation of war's dark ingenuity, a haunting chronicle of how desperation can drive science to compromise its soul. What began as a pharmacological shortcut became a historical milestone in the weaponization of the human body. It reminds us that even the most well-intentioned innovations, when pressed into the service of ruthless ambition, can spiral into catastrophic misuse. Today's scholars, soldiers, and scientists must grapple with this precedent as they chart the course of future conflict, where biology and technology merge more intimately than ever before. The enduring lesson of Pervitin is not merely one of caution, but of responsibility. For no matter how distant or sophisticated the tools of modern warfare become, their impact will always reach directly into the hearts and minds of those who wield them. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. As the world edges into a future dominated by cybernetic implants, gene therapies, and neuroadaptive interfaces, the ghost of Pervitin continues to whisper warnings. It's not just a relic of a darker time, but a living metaphor for how technological ambition, without ethical compass, can steer even the most advanced societies toward perilous ends. Military laboratories now explore the possibility of 24-hour combat readiness through brain-computer linkages, while pharmaceutical companies race to patent drugs that silence fear and amplify compliance. These developments promise revolution, but they echo a chilling familiar note that performance becomes paramount, and the person behind the performance fades. The story of Nazi soldiers drugged before battle is still unfolding, not in the trenches, but in our decisions, our doctrines, and our designs. In every syringe, chip, or protocol we choose to develop, the same question lies buried. Are we building tools to defend human dignity or to erase it? War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Even in popular culture, the tale of Pervitin has left its imprint, morphing from journalistic exposés and scholarly footnotes into gritty war films, thrillers, and dystopian fiction. The archetype of the tireless, eerily focused soldier one who fights without pause, remorse, or rests at the crossroads of truth and myth because of this real history. Documentaries trace its lineage, with grainy footage of trembling prisoners still wired from combat. Sci-fi authors borrow its grim logic to imagine soldiers fused with chemical obedience, while military simulations quietly use past data to model soldier burnout and stimulant response. What was once a clandestine tool of destruction has become a narrative fulcrum for storytellers and analysts alike. Its legacy shows how even the darkest innovations can survive by mutating into metaphor, perpetuating the collision between what we hope to control and the chaos we ultimately unleash. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. The enduring relevance of Pervitin lies in its undeniable ability to collapse time. It condensed the limitations of the human body into a brutal efficiency that mirrored the acceleration of war itself. What once took days to march could now be done in relentless, sleepless hours. What once required morale and courage was replaced by chemistry and command. Yet, in shrinking the emotional timeline of war, it also compressed its moral space. Decisions once filtered through exhaustion or fear human brakes on inhuman orders were chemically bypassed, and in this vacuum, atrocities gained swift execution. The slippery slope from biological augmentation to ethical erosion was not just walked, it was sprinted under the influence. Pervitin demonstrated that speed is not always progress, and that blurring the lines between man and mechanism is a gamble rarely worth winning. In Chasing the Perfect Soldier, Nazi Germany revealed a terrible paradox. To mechanize the warrior is to deconstruct the warfighter. The result is not invincibility, it is irreparable damage. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Perhaps the most unsettling legacy of Pervitin is the revelation it offers into how quickly morality can become a casualty of efficiency. In the cold calculus of Nazi warfare, every second saved, every march extended, every hesitation eliminated was seen as tactical victory. But those gains came at the expense of conscience, of clarity, of humanity itself. The pill that kept men awake was the same pill that dulled empathy, blurred judgment, and enabled monsters in uniform to act with mechanical indifference. In scaling war to industrial proportions, Nazi Germany abandoned not just treaty constraints or international norms, but the primal truths of human limitation and emotional suffering. The Pervitin experiment was a chemical prelude to a hell born not only of ideology, but of pharmacological delusion. It is no wonder that to this day, its story is invoked not just with scientific curiosity, but with moral dread. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. The final chapter of Pervitin's military story is written not in the labs or trenches, but in our collective moral ledger. It forces modern societies to confront an undeniable truth that the boundaries between innovation and violation are razor-thin in times of war. The allure of the chemically enhanced soldier was never just about winning battles. It was about reshaping the very nature of combat and the combatant. What makes the Pervitin case chilling is that it succeeded, briefly, in doing just that. It robbed soldiers of rest, yes, but more ominously, it robbed them of reflection, remorse, resistance. It offered a dark glimpse into a future where war is waged not just against enemies, but against our own thresholds of endurance and ethics. As we move further into the age of biotechnology and machine-integrated warfare, we carry with us this warning etched in the marrow of history. Progress in war without moral progress alongside it becomes regression, and that is the ultimate legacy of Pervitin. not just what it enabled, but what it eroded. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. In the end, Pervitin tells us more about the frailty of human ambition than it does about chemistry. It exposes the cracks in a society willing to sacrifice its own in pursuit of dominance, turning soldiers into vessels of ideology and pharmacology rather than agents of conscience. It is a case study in how the horrors of war are not just deployed outward, but also inward, infiltrating the very psychology of the men expected to carry it forward. Nazi Germany's failure was not only a military collapse, but a moral implosion catalyzed by its misuse of science. Today, our technologies are faster, our tools more precise, and yet the question remains unchanged. What is the human cost of the advantage we seek? As we stand on the edge of new eras in warfare, the memory of drugged soldiers marching blindly toward destruction must remain vivid. We must remember that innovation without introspection invites history to repeat itself. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So as the dust continues to settle on the battlefields of the past, the saga of Pervitin calls us to reflect not just on what we do in war, but why we do it, and at what cost. It is a story of a pill, yes, but more importantly, a parable about the seduction of speed over sense, of control over conscience. In every direction, the world turns toward faster, sharper, more optimized combat tools. The lessons of the 1940s pulse like a quiet alarm. Even the most powerful regimes are not immune to the blind pursuit of efficiency at the expense of soul. That tablet, swallowed by millions of soldiers in the name of victory, should forever signal what happens when human beings are stripped of rest, reflection, and the right to feel. The pill made them faster, but it did not make them better. And in the long toll of history, that difference is everything. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. And so, the silent specter of Pervitin lingers, not just in yellowed Wehrmacht medical logs or dust-covered pillboxes, but in the fundamental choices every modern military must make. We now possess tools the Nazis could never have imagined, yet we flirt with the same temptation to optimize the warfighter not through discipline or training, but through chemistry and code. The transformation of soldier into system, of will into algorithm, begins quiet and well-intentioned. But the story of Pervitin reminds us that once you start erasing human limits, you risk erasing the human entirely. It is why this tale refuses to fade, why it still tugs at the conscience of generals, ethicists, and scientists alike. Because far beyond its use in bombed-out cities or frozen frontlines, its real battleground is memory and our willingness to learn from it. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. In that memory, Pervitin endures not merely as a drug, but as a symbol of war's most perilous ambition, to outpace the human condition. The Nazis sought to eliminate weakness, to discard rest and fear like outdated armor, and in doing so, they mechanized vitality itself. Soldiers became tools sharpened to a dangerous edge, only to fracture under the weight of that unnatural polish. Today, we recognize that same urge in different uniforms and languages, cloaked in the language of optimization and innovation. But the substance remains the same, the drive to create the perfect warrior by stripping away what made them human to begin with. If we are to honor the lessons of the past, we must let the echo of Pervitin guide future choices, not out of fear, but humility. For in every battle plan drawn, every drug tested, every enhancement imagined, the ultimate question must be this: are we building a better soldier, or merely breaking one in slower, quieter ways? War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. In that quiet reckoning lies the final truth of Pervitin's legacy. It was not simply a drug, nor merely a tactic. It was a distortion of purpose, a corruption of what war demands and what it should defend. By seeking supremacy through artificial means, Nazi Germany revealed not its strength, but its fear of limits, of vulnerability, of the very traits that make soldiers human. That fear turned innovation into injury and left behind a warning more potent than any battlefield report. As we chart new frontiers in defense and domination, let us not forget that the power to shatter human boundaries is the power to erase human beings. The right question is no longer what we can make a soldier do, but what kind of world we build when we forget what a soldier is. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So let the story of Pervitin rest not as an isolated disgrace of history, but as a living ethics test for generations to come. It is at once a chronicle of what science can achieve and what blind ambition can destroy. The pill that kept men marching through ruin now asks cooler heads to pause, to weigh innovation not just for its tactical yield, but for its toll on the soul. The enemy in war is never simply across the trench. Sometimes, it lies in the choices made behind laboratory doors and at briefing tables, where the human form is seen less as a steward of strength and more as a frontier to be tamed. If we take anything from this legacy, let it be resolved that in our quest to become more powerful, we must also become more principled. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. And thus we close the dossier on Pervitin not as a relic to be shelved, but as a moral compass held aloft amid the storm of future conflicts. What began as a desperate bid for control over war's unpredictability became a parable of unintended consequences. The drug may have worn off, but its effects linger in our policies, our science, and our collective conscience. As nations stride toward warfare augmented by machine learning, personalized biotech, and psychological conditioning, the shadow of those tiny white pills looms ever larger. We are reminded that the lines we draw today between enhancement and exploitation, between resilience and ruin, are not abstract, they are forged in human lives. So when the next innovation promises to transcend weakness, to sharpen courage, or to erase fear, let history speak with one steady voice. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. The closing chapter of the Pervitin saga is not simply a warning, it is a challenge. It asks us to confront the uncomfortable truths about how far we are willing to push the boundaries of flesh and will in service to the state. In Nazi Germany, science bent its knee to ideology, and in that moment, medicine became weapon. The echoes of that decision still reverberate through our military strategies, research grants, and cultural imaginations. As we navigate AI-commanded drones, brainwave-driven squads, and neural conditioning regimens, the ghost of Pervitin haunts every line of code and capsule. It is not enough to remember what happened. We must ensure it never happens again. For true strength in war is not in the perfection of soldiers, but in the preservation of their humanity. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. And so, in the archives of war, among pages stained by blood and ambition, the name Pervitin remains not just as a pharmacological footnote, but as a defining moment in the perilous union of science and supremacy. It stands for what happens when the desire to conquer overrides the duty to care. When men are remade, not as heroes, but as tools in a grand, inhuman design. The legacy of those chalky white pills, distributed with protocol and purpose, is more than medical, it is philosophical. They stripped war of rest, of reflection, and finally, of reason. Today, as we balance on the precipice of a new military age fueled by algorithms, enhanced genomes, and silent drones, the memory of Pervitin must remain visible behind every innovation's shimmering promise, because to forget is to repeat. And if there is any wisdom to take from this dark experiment in chemically mastered war, it is this: that a soldier's strength lies not in their ability to act without pause, but in their right to pause at all. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Let us remember then that Pervitin was not merely a drug, it was a decision. a choice made in the depths of fear and aggression, cloaked in science but rooted in desperation. It is a story that reminds us how easily innovation can become indoctrination when separated from careful thinking and ethical restraint. The path from pharmacy to battlefield is shorter than we think, and the lessons inscribed in the dark corners of World War II still pulse under the skin of modern ambition. Every time we dream of warriors who need no rest, who obey without thought, who endure without limit, we walk the edge of that same abyss. The Nazis reached into the bloodstream of their soldiers to make them more than human, and ended up making them less. So let the legacy of Pervitin be not a forgotten chemical line in a war ledger, but a living reminder of choices made, of damage done, and of vigilance still required. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In the end, the tale of Pervitin illustrates a chilling intersection between brilliance and blindness, a technological achievement soaked in moral failure. The Nazi regime's use of methamphetamine in warfare wasn't simply about domination over their enemies. It was about establishing dominance over their own troops, over the very notion of human endurance. It turned medicine into command, and command into chemical compulsion. And while history rightly condemns the ideology that drove such choices, we must also confront the method. The temptation to mold minds and bodies into obedient extensions of state ambition remains as strong as ever. From the deep scars etched into the lives of drugged Wehrmacht soldiers to today's quiet experiments in performance and control, the thread is unbroken. The story of Pervitin is the story of how a war for speed, for strength, for certainty, lost its soul in the process. And perhaps, more than any artillery round or battle plan, that is the most dangerous weapon we have ever devised. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. So let us end where we began, with a soldier in the snow, eyes wide, heart racing, driven onward not by belief or bravery, but by the bitter pulse of chemistry coursing through his veins. Somewhere behind him, distant from the crackle of rifle fire and grinding of tank treads, a choice was made that his body could not revoke. That choice, to override sleep, fear, and moral compass in service to a vision of swift conquest, continues to echo far beyond the ruins of the Reich. Pervitin was not the only weapon of its kind, nor will it be the last, but perhaps it remains the most potent reminder of what is lost when we prioritize efficiency over empathy, power over principle. In remembering the drug, we confront the human cost of progress without restraint, and as we face a future filled with dazzling tools and terrible temptations, let that soldier's march serve as our warning. The longest battles are not always fought against an enemy, they are fought within ourselves. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. History does not judge innovation by what it achieves, but by what it endures. And the legacy of Pervitin, seen now through the lens of decades, is one of corrosive triumph. It won hours, advances, and brief illusions of supremacy, but it could not outlast the truth of its cost. That snowy field, that sleepless march, the cold grip of chemical obedience, these are not moments of victory, but echoes of a warning etched in human lives. For every future battlefield, real or imagined, this story must be consulted before any new compound is swallowed, any enhancement authorized, any doctrine codified. In the soldier's body lie the consequences of the state's ambition, and the price, once paid, cannot be withdrawn. So, whether we fight with drones or data, whether our arsenals glow with algorithms or adrenaline, let us carry forward one principle above all: that the mind behind the weapon must remain human. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. And that's why the legacy of Pervitin must remain front and center, not only as a case study in the abuse of science, but as a mirror for the choices yet to come. In every conflict, there will be voices arguing for shortcuts, faster reflexes, longer endurance, fewer doubts. But history tells us that when we sacrifice reflection for reaction, we do violence not only to the body, but to the better angels of our nature. The Nazi regime's attempt to chemically perfect the soldier failed, not because the drugs lacked effect, but because they ignored the soul. As nations now engineer wars of precision, they must also engineer clarity about what kind of future is worth fighting for and what must never be repeated. For the story of Pervitin does not belong solely to the past. It lives, uneasily, in everything we aim to become. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. So, as the final echoes of marching boots fade into history, let Pervitin remain a symbol not of might, but of misjudgment. It reminds us that in every war the true frontier is not just land or power, but the integrity of the human spirit. When that spirit is bent by chemicals, by doctrine, or by desperation, the victory comes at a price too high to tally. The Nazi project to chemically enhance soldiers showed us how innovation unleashed without ethics can hollow out even the strongest legions. Let future generations of leaders, scientists, and soldiers alike remember that strength is not found in endless wakefulness or fearless obedience, but in the ability to choose to doubt, to feel, to resist, because in the end, the greatest weapon we possess is not speed nor stamina, but our shared humanity. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. And as the last chill of that chemically driven winter settles into the deep memory of history, we are left not with triumph, but with testimony. Testimony that the rush for tactical advantage can too easily blur into the erosion of moral ground, and that every invention born in urgency asks to be tempered by wisdom. The saga of Pervitin closes not with a bang or a headline, but with whispered lessons carried in the broken silences of those who survived it. Their marches, their dreams, their tremors, these are now ours to remember. For in the future, wars that will be programmed, prescribed, and perhaps even predicted, the same old question will rise again. Not just what can we make a soldier do, but who do we become when we forget who that soldier is? In the final measure, the most dangerous weapon in history was not a bomb or a bullet, it was an idea unchecked. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. And so history hands us not just a record, but a responsibility to remember that the edge we seek in battle must never come at the collapse of the very humanity we claim to defend. Pervitin was more than a pill. It was a prism revealing what happens when we aim to eliminate fragility instead of understanding it, when warfare becomes less about strategy and more about stripping the soul from the soldier. As the pages close on this dark episode, its final message is not one of condemnation alone, but of caution, because the next innovation will come, as it always does. But its measure should not be in how far it pushes the body, but in how well it protects the person. In the quiet between wars, where choices are still ours to make, the legacy of Pervitin urges us, begs us to pause, because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything.